Happy Monday. Thank you, Nicole. Welcome to The Beat, everyone. I'm Ari Melber. We have James Carville joining us to start this last full week before Election Day in America. And we're covering these closing arguments and what are profoundly different visions of America tonight. So we're going to get to all that for you, but we begin with the numbers, the facts. We are 8 days out from Election Day. Bet you know that one. A larger number of states are now hosting early voting than last week, up to 44 states. And we're seeing new clues of a very high turnout election thus far. Over 44 million Americans have now cast their ballots. That's about 30% of 2020's entire electorate. A third almost of everyone who voted in 2020, which you may recall was a huge high turnout year. I'm going to get into that. And this is the first day, as I've done this with you each night, and we'll continue to do it if you join me, the first day that we can report early voting is available in every single state, up from 49. The race remains tied in the critical swing states that decide the election, and a battery of national polls are also statistically tied. Now, you might say you've seen references to a candidate leading. We've seen headlines that say Harris is slightly up. But if you are not looking to just find a dramatic or exciting headline and you're interested in the actual numbers, as we are, I will remind you, on the numbers, no candidate, not Harris and not Trump, has recently eclipsed the margin of error in any of the reputable recent polls. So statistically, it's tied. Now, Harris has been in 3 states over the weekend and is back in Michigan with 3 events there today. Trump is in Georgia, and 2.9 million people have voted there. That's 60% of last time, which is really something. If you remember what I just told you, overall, across the nation, where some states have more or less early voting, we're almost at a third of last time. And in Georgia, they're well past half. They're into a majority of all of last time's electorate, which suggests a very high turnout race. Which candidate is that good for? Well, we don't know yet. Over in Michigan, where I mentioned Harris is, 1.7 million people have voted, a state where Biden won last time by about 150,000. Now, Harris is coming off a big cosign from Beyonce, who was basically one of the only cultural figures in America left who has a Taylor Swift-level following. It was a big deal to get her cosign and a bigger, larger deal to get her doing that rally this weekend. The Houston singer is known for her singing, for her dancing, for her R&B, for her lyrics, and even for her recent dabbling into the country space. She is known and beloved by many voting Americans, many people who are more into music than politics, and she told her followers very clearly with Harris that voting is a powerful tool.
For all the men and women in this room and watching around the country, we need you. Your voice has power and magnitude. Your vote is one of the most valuable tools, and we need you.
Men across America do not want to see their daughters and wives and sisters and mothers put at risk because their rights have been taken. I see the men here, and I thank you. The men of America don't want this.
That was just some of that powerful rally and the appeal. Now, you may recall we headed into the weekend covering these growing objections to the double standard in this race. It is a point that was raised, for example, by Charlemagne in criticizing CNN on their air. This narrative where Kamala Harris is pressed on policy details or word choice or her precise distinctions of what she would do differently from the Biden first term, which are, of course, fair questions. We've asked some of them in reasonable ways, but that is put on par or on balance with Trump just blatantly vowing to abuse power, to gut the DOJ, cancel his own planned trial, deploy military force inside the U.S., prosecute critics, target American citizens as, quote, enemies, deride America as a, quote, trash heap, threaten the free press, and do all this while hosting blatantly racist, demonizing events, including this almost ineffable rally last night as part of his closing message. Now, we're going to get to that rally in a way, although I won't be airing parts of it on this program. But it was that contrast, which I think is front of mind for many people, which Michelle Obama really laid into at her Harris rally.
So I hope you'll forgive me if I'm a little frustrated that some of us are choosing to ignore Donald Trump's gross incompetence while asking Kamala to dazzle us at every turn. I hope that you'll forgive me if I'm a little angry that we are indifferent to his erratic behavior, his obvious mental decline, his history as a convicted felon, a known slumlord, a predator found liable for sexual abuse, all of this while we pick apart Kamala's answers from interviews that he doesn't even have the courage to do.
Michelle Obama taking what many people have articulated and described as that double standard and using it for fuel, turning it into a rallying cry. And by the way, that's what the political right has done in this country for many decades. Fairly or not, supported by evidence or not, they have waged a simultaneous war of working the refs, attacking the press, and then using that to energize their side. Interesting to hear Michelle Obama do it in her own way. Now, this brings us to Trump's Sunday night rally in New York City's Madison Square Garden. The campaign billed it, pitched it as some kind of, quote, closing message, but it didn't go well, and it has the Trump campaign reeling in various ways because of the blowback over racist, hateful, sexual, and demeaning remarks by a whole range of speakers. Now, I'm going to tell you what we have deemed newsworthy about this, but we are not going to be airing much from the rally on this newscast. And I'll tell you the reason. We try to be transparent. Much of what happened on that rally, especially with the warm-up speakers, and there were many of them, simply does not meet our standards. I will report on some parts of it so you understand exactly what happened if you didn't happen to catch the rally over the weekend. Maybe you were busy living life on Sunday night. I will start with Tony Hinchcliffe, who offered what he billed as jokes, but were claims about how he says Latinos have sex, how he dubbed Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage, as the Times put it, how he made a racist reference to black people and watermelon. That speaker alone driving an absolute onslaught of bad press and headlines. And, of course, that not only looks bad, it distracts from what the campaign said was their closing message. Of course, the things that they're getting in trouble for are part of Donald Trump's closing message. He recently himself called America a garbage can for the world based on his views of immigration. He's doubled down on attacking opponents as the enemy within. He did that last night. I can tell you that most of the extreme vile attacks came from the assorted speakers that the campaign had handpicked for their big closing rally. And so one thing that's happening today is a kind of faux distancing from the campaign to its handpicked speakers that's familiar to anyone who's spent any time on the political internet, where you see trolls, maybe even people you know, repost some hateful material or just ask insulting questions and then claim they're not endorsing those positions. They're just, putting that bile out into the world. Now, I will summarize, according to reports, some of what we heard without re-airing it. One of those warm-up speakers literally called Harris the Antichrist, another the devil, another saying she had pimp handlers, as a New York Times account summarized, another claiming Democrats are degenerates, lowlives, Jew haters. Every one of them is that quote. That's a claim that would actually be arguable defamation if you named specific people. Most American Jews are registered Democrats. Kamala Harris is married to a Jewish American Democrat, if you want to get into it. But fact-checking this kind of lying venom only takes you so far. The New York Times lead reported that this closing rally, which would have shocked anyone a couple decades back in American life, was a, quote, vivid and at times racist display of the dark energy animating the MAGA movement. Now, as for the campaigning around all this, there are times where Kamala Harris has tried to transcend or glide past the so-called Trump show to make sure she's pushing her own message. There are other times where she's drawn attention to Donald Trump's extremism and hate, saying take him seriously to voters. That's what she did at their one and only debate, baiting him into certain topics that relate to his conduct that she wanted to draw attention to. And we can tell you with the fallout from this rally today, Harris took that second path, arguing that Trump's extreme rally with the personal grievances and the hate and the vile speakers actually confirms one of her core critiques of why she says he is unfit to lead.
Donald Trump's event in Madison Square Garden really highlighted a point that I've been making throughout this campaign. He is focused and actually fixated on his grievances, on himself, and on dividing our country. It is absolutely something that is intended to and is fanning the fuel of trying to divide our country.
That fuel to divide us. Well, fuel can power any number of reactions. To Harris campaigning Sunday at a Puerto Rican restaurant in Pennsylvania, which boasts a voting population of about 500,000 people of Puerto Rican descent. So now you know a bit about what that rally was like without having to rehear every claim, attack, and supposed joke that was peddled. All right. Now, on the politics of it all, the messaging and the PR of the Trump show, there are people who ask whether every Trump scandal is still a kind of gambit for attention that works in his favor. Is this that? He certainly got attention for the rally. Well, there are clear signs that this is not the Monday that the campaign wanted starting this last full week, as votes are already coming in, that these are not the headlines that it wanted. Remember, Donald Trump leads a kind of political style which never apologizes, never walks away from a fight, no matter what he and his team are accused of, including a literal insurrection. That's their mood. We know that by now. But here's something you might not have heard yet, depending on how closely you followed the news or your phone today. The Trump campaign has taken the rare step for them of trying to run away from the very speakers it booked for that big rally last night. A campaign aide going on record to now say the line calling Puerto Rico an island of trash, quote, does not reflect the views of President Trump or the campaign. Except that it does. But politically, that is the quote, the sound of a campaign doing damage control, not triumphantly embracing the outrage or the controversy or the spectacle of another over-the-top event that you can't handle and you don't get our vibe and we were just joking and that's just how we are and everyone's PC snowflakes and look at Hulk, isn't he a neat person to choose the next president or whatever? It's not that at all. What they're doing, having assessed the reaction, is what candidates and politicians do, even someone like Donald Trump, who's always telling you and proclaiming that he's so different. Well, he's been a politician for a minute now. He served in the highest office of the land. He's on his third campaign. He's gotten the hang of running these campaigns in his own way, even if he's never actually won more votes than the other candidate. He's lost the total vote. He's come in second in the total number of American votes both times he's ran. But he and his team do know that when you mess up enough, you're always better off walking away than sticking to it, even if your larger Uber message is you never walk away. And so they're walking away from part of last night. Why is that? And what does that say about both the hate, what the New York Times called the misogyny and racism that was laid so bare last night? What does it say about that and what it takes to do something Donald Trump has never done, which is get above 47% of the country's support? It's a big question. James Carville knows a thing or two about campaigns. He's here, and we're going to get into that in 90 seconds. Stay with us.
My opponent spends full time talking about just kind of diminishing who we are as America and talking down at people, talking about, I don't know, that we're the garbage can of the world. We're not.
Kamala Harris going in on Donald Trump and that closing rally message that we heard last night. There she was speaking in Michigan. We're joined now by James Carville, legendary Democratic strategist. His new piece in the Times is said, I should say, is where he says, why I'm certain Kamala Harris will win. We'll get to that. But welcome, James. 8 days out. As I've tried to do each night here, I go through the numbers. I'm curious your thoughts on the high turnout, some of the other themes. But let's start with that question I raised. What Donald Trump and his team, selected by him, vetted by him, way too late in the season and the hour to claim you didn't know who you were putting on that very big stage. Right. His team and what he and they argued last night. Your thoughts?
I lost the sound. Well, my thoughts are this. I looked at it, and, you know, they came after women. I said nothing because I'm not a woman. They came after Puerto Ricans. I said nothing because I'm not a Puerto Rican. They came after black people. I said nothing because I'm not black. But then they came after watermelons. That's where James Carville comes out of his chair. Okay, next thing you know, they're going to come after gumbo, and they're going to take our gumbo away from us. It was so disgusting. It was so racist. It was so misogynistic. The only way to deal with this is through humor. If you try to deal with it by being serious, you'll just get so mad and so raged you can't see. So you're gonna have to take my cold dead hands off my watermelon. I can tell you that right now. We're not going there.
There you go. Spoken like the Raging Cajun. Let's link it to the math. There's a lot that goes on. We've lived through a lot.
Right. Right.
But the math is the factual history. Donald Trump did about 46% in 16 and got the Electoral College. He did about 46% in 20 and lost. And I ask you, did what we see and saw and lived just tonight and through the rally last night, does that help him get up over that 46% ceiling he's had?
He lost in 2018. He lost in 2020. He lost in 2022. The Democrats have won every election that's been held in the last 2 years. Trump is a giant loser. And the sooner people acknowledge that and know that it's true, they stop fearing him. The stuff last night was so over the top, it's unbelievable. Let me just one little factoid here. You know how many Puerto Rican voters there are in Pennsylvania? 273,000. This is going to cost him votes, and a substantial Puerto Rican vote, also in Michigan. And I've worked. These are very prideful people. They describe the Puerto Ricans first. They describe that is their identity marker. And this is a community that is not going to take well to this. I promise you. And there's a ton in Florida, which is going to end up being a lot closer than anybody thinks. But have Steve Kornacki look around and see how many Puerto Rican voters there are in swing states. There's a lot, and they much more identify with their island than almost anybody else around the world. I promise you that.
And look, I don't do a ton of generalizations. I'll say most people, when you attack them for who they are, where they come from, or you try to paint them all with one brush, most people don't find that a very appealing closing argument or a respectful way to engage. I want to go to the numbers again, because now we're in it. I mean, almost a third of people voted from the last electorate numerically. People are voting right now. We're in it. We won't have the results till later. The Republicans, as you know, have made a big deal out of showing a type of confidence or hype or bluster. In 22, they even tried to pollute the sort of polling markets to that effect. We've heard a lot more talk on the right about they're going to win. Your op-ed and some of what you've been saying lately is a more confident model than the anxiety we've heard from Democrats. If you go to the popular vote over the years, I want to show this because it's a point you and others have said. Nationally, Republicans don't usually get the total vote. They don't usually win more votes. This is how many times people have picked more people have picked the Democrat for the White House. And then the 2020 map, why don't you walk us through this, James? Do you see Harris holding this winning coalition, this map, or how would it be different, you think?
Probably, I mean, to be honest, in a macro sense, we may not do, there's a lot of talk, we may not do as well with non-white voters as we did in 2020 in terms of turnout, in terms of total vote. It might be a little bit off. But anyway, I think whites are really, just to give you my analysis, college white males tend to be a lot more pro-choice than other males, and they also have something to lose in this economy. And, there's a lot of non-college white women who are very pro-choice, and a lot of Hispanic women. That people think that's why we held on and won Nevada in 2022. So this entire reproductive rights thing has not germinated like it's going to do on election day, and people in early voting. And you see all this early vote analysis. To the person, they all say it's more heavily female than it should be, and I'm not surprised by that. And it makes me happy. We're going to win. Okay, this is not the country I live in. This is just I refuse to believe that. We're going to win because this is not who we are. There are other reasons. You pointed out brilliantly. The surrogate game, we're 98-2 up. We have every kind of surrogate you can think of. Entertainment surrogates, cultural surrogates, political surrogates, athletic surrogates. Our cup runneth over, and they help coming down the stretch because you can deploy them in many different places, and they can, like Beyonce did. So I'm very encouraged. I'm very comfortable with my prediction, my certainty that we're going to win, because we're going to win, baby. We're just going to win this thing.
Yeah. Viewers of The Beat know we don't spin our wheels much on a lot of these big early polls. You have to follow the facts. But the early vote is not a poll, and it's up. Do you think that means more people are just voting earlier, and we've had all these COVID evolutions, or do you think this is going to be a very high turnout election? Because if it's high turnout and high turnout among women, then Harris is in a good spot.
You know, I'm not an election voter predictor on turnout, but it sure seems to me that there's increasing Democratic enthusiasm. Just give you just a little factoid. The Washington Post lost 200,000 subscribers. That's 200,000 people that actually went and clicked onto something, and they had to go through some rigmarole to cancel a subscription. You think that's not an indication of energy? And I know it's Northern Virginia and, you know, Chevy Chase and D.C., but that tells me a lot.
Energy, yeah.
And that tells me that there's feeling out there, and there's depth of feeling. I keep hearing, and you point out so well, you got these I just got to be fair. Harris could have had a better language on Biden, but then again, Trump's director of national intelligence, a lifelong Republican, said he thinks he's a Russian agent. Oh, okay, well, just tell the truth on both. What difference it make? I mean, could have given a better answer. Is an agent of an adversarial foreign power. What's the difference, James? We just tell the truth. These are, if America goes down, it's going to be because of all of these people that couldn't help but tell the truth. They're idiots.
I got something else to show you, but I'm going to give you the pop quiz because I know you love facts and you think facts move farther than anything else. Do you happen to know how many people have watched this Donald Trump, Joe Rogan interview just on YouTube, not even counting all the podcast people who use their phone, but just on YouTube? How many?
No, but it's a lot, I can tell you that. Well, I wasn't one of them, but a lot of other people were. Yeah,
well, it's topping 30 million already. I don't want to get into that with you. And the interesting moment when Donald Trump admitted, yet again, he knew he lost 2020. We have the sound. He actually admits he lost, then he lies again. And with so many millions of people watching that, I want to get your breakdown, your sometimes skeptical gimlet eye, if you will. James, stay with me. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
Plus 50, 104,000. They'll say, well, both of them are stretching the numbers a little bit. Everybody got an opinion. This is just the most American thing you can do.
Hey, James Carville back in 92. Welcome back, sir. Let me show you what I mentioned, which is you can like it, you can dislike it, you can ignore it, but how people get information, whatever kind, is changing. Joe Rogan's the biggest podcaster in the country, not biggest on politics or any particular category, just the biggest. So he's reaching millions on the pod. He's reached, as I mentioned, over 30 million with the new Trump interview. And he said in the interview he's in discussions with the Harris campaign. He's hoping she'll still make it in this next week. One of the things I found in listening to parts of it was how Trump, in that setting, he gets a little more comfortable. It was about 3 hours total, if you can believe that. He left a lot of people waiting to see him speak just to keep going. And in that setting, James, he blurts out, I lost. I know it was close. I lost 2020, blah, 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 blah. And then he comes back and lies again. And they have this back and forth. Take a listen.
I lost by one tenth of a point.
What is
they say it was 22,000 votes. I won by I lost by I didn't lose, but they say I lost. It was the most crooked election.
Okay, but give me some examples of how.
Well, they were supposed to get legislative approval to do the things they did, and they didn't get it. In many cases, they didn't get it.
What things?
Anything. I want to be a whale psychiatrist. Do you think that we have aliens coming, flying around or whatever?
Did you just float out the idea of getting rid of income taxes and replacing it with tariffs?
Well, okay.
Were you serious about that?
Yeah, sure, but why not?
Why not? It went on like that. James, does it matter that he seems to very clearly know that he lost, which means a heck of a lot of people did a lot of things, including some risking their lives, going to jail. They're all responsible for that over what he knows is a lie. Does any of that matter right now? And what do you make of that whole pod?
Well, first of all, it's a little factoid. There were 61 legal actions brought, mostly by Republicans, about all of this. They lost 60 of them. They got some minor, insignificant ruling in Pennsylvania that would have changed nothing in their way. So the idea that you had all of this rules violation that went on and no one said anything, there were, again, 60, I think I'm right on this, but somebody will correct me, I'm sure if I'm wrong, 61 lawsuits, they lost, they were 1 for 61. That's not a good average. That's not good. You're not going to do very good doing that. And, you know, he just, everything he says, and, you know, hopefully it breaks through, and I think it's starting to break through, but between now and Election Day, this guy is a loser. He's fat. He's pathetic. He doesn't know where he is. He's confused. He's dazed. And I think people are going to see through that. And, you know, a lot of these macho, you know, guys, you know, I don't think they think it's macho to attack women, attack Puerto Ricans. I mean, I don't think they're or blacks or anything else. And we're going to win this thing, baby. We're going to win it. I'm telling you right now. I feel it in my bones. I'm not backing off. You know, people, oh, man, you're crazy. You just can't say that. Look at the polls. They tied. I'm saying it right now. We're winning. We're going to win. I'm more confident today than I was 2 days ago.
There you have it.
I promise you.
There you have it. And look, I'm old enough to remember when there was a different nominee. He's the current president. And you weren't saying we were going to win. So you've known to be a bit of a truth teller, even though you also have your political views. James, I appreciate you joining us for 2 segments. Let's keep in close touch over these 8 days. All right, sir?
Oh, the truth is, I always love to talk to you. All right, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Let's go get them.
Yes, sir. Thank you. James Carville joining us as always. If James is right, one of the key ways it would happen is women turnout surging. Kamala Harris could win under that math. And we're going to have a breakdown for you on exactly how that could work next. All right. We are now beginning today, together, the last week before the election, last full week. And we have something for you tonight that we just didn't know last month. People say, Ari, are you always doing the same stories over and over? Sometimes, but not this time. We now know Americans are voting early at record rates. We didn't know that a month ago. The 44 million Americans who have now already voted, as of today, comprise almost a third, about 30% of all the votes in 2020. That race, you might recall, was actually the highest turnout in a century since women had the right to vote. So, in other words, if you only count elections where all genders, both genders, could vote, 2020 would be the highest ever. And that high turnout model was the coalition which beat Trump and elected Biden-Harris. And so here we are wondering, are we going to have an electorate that looks kind of like that or larger, which would, all things considered, benefit Harris? Or are we going to have a different type of electorate? We don't know that. But we do know the early vote is high. So who is casting these early ballots right now? Well, we know something about that as well. It's a lot of women. In the key states so far, more women tend to be early voting. In North Carolina, for example, more than men. And so if that holds in multiple states, that could have a huge impact. In 9 days and say, you told me this was going to... No, I'm not telling you what the rest of the votes are going to be. I'm mentioning to you what we're learning about the early votes. And it may not be by accident. Harris is getting her team, you might say, in formation. Beyonce appearing at this Harris rally to reinforce the message.
I'm not here as a politician. I'm here as a mother. A mother who cares deeply about the world my children and all of our children live in. A world where we have the freedom to control our bodies. Your voice has power and magnitude. Your vote is one of the most valuable tools, and we need you.
Beyonce making it very clear. You might say, who run the world? Voters. Girls. Well, it depends. Michelle Obama also, not mincing words, at her speech in Michigan.
If your wife is shivering and bleeding on the operating room table during a routine delivery gone bad, You will be the one praying that it's not too late. You will be the one pleading for somebody, anybody, to do something. To anyone out there thinking about sitting out this election, if we don't get this election right, your wife, your daughter, your mother, we as women will become collateral damage to your rage.
That is a big and important claim at a time where politically women voters are key, as I just showed you, and policy-wise, this is an election that affects the rights of women. There are many different issues that people vote on. We all remember the season of BLM, and a heck of a lot of people who might not have been black stood up and said, this is a big issue, what are we doing about it? Now we have an issue that hits half the population automatically, but a lot of people, you could argue most people, have some interaction with these issues, whether it's their body or the body of someone close to them, as Michelle Obama eloquently put it there. So as we keep our eyes on both the import of these issues and women's turnout, now that we're learning about it, we have a special panel. Returning is activist and actress Sophia Bush and Democratic strategist Aisha Mills, who used to be the president of the National Institute for Reproductive Health. Great to have you both here. Aisha, your thought on what was presented in that rally and that closing message.
Well, let me just also highlight, first of all, that when we look at the optics of who is going to save us here in America and who is exciting people and getting people out to vote, I just want to give a shout out to black women who always show up on the right side of justice and all the things. That is exciting to me because when we talk about enthusiasm, what I have been hearing, and I've been talking to people in South Carolina, of all places, so where my family is all from, we have been hearing that African-American women are in these interesting conversations with white women who are relatively conservative and coming together and saying, we're going to get out and we're going to vote because at the end of the day, we are reimagining feminism in a way that I think is going to really play out in this election. So the optics of what we see generally around the Harris campaign excite me because I think that we have a coming together of women of all stripes that we hadn't seen in the past that I don't want us to forget is abnormal because oftentimes there's that divide that's around race with regards to women. And I think that women collectively are coming together. That's exciting to me.
Well, I think for those of us who've been blessed with the privilege of exposure and diverse community, we understand the illusion that you speak of, this idea of separateness. And I think, unfortunately, it's taken us this far and the kinds of losses we've been seeing around the country, the abuse women are suffering around the country. But I think a lot of women who look like me have really woken up to the fact that this idea of proximity to power is absolutely an illusion. A white supremacist patriarchy is not here to protect us. And when women, mothers, are dying in hospitals of preventable situations, when doctors are prohibited from giving them care because they're terrified they're going to go to jail, I think everyone understands that for the groups like yours, bless you for your leadership and all the things you
Tiếp theo lên hàng thứ 9, các bạn sẽ móc cho mình theo công thức FLO và chúng ta sẽ móc cạnh ở bên ngoài. Và các bạn sẽ móc cho mình là 30 mũi móc đơn. Tiếp theo thì mình sẽ móc lên hàng thứ 10. Và hàng thứ 10 thì các bạn sẽ móc cho mình ở mỗi chân móc là một mũi móc đơn. Và chúng ta có tổng cộng là 30 mũi móc đơn.